Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friends and Neighbors. I am Sandra Onal, and we are missing Miss Sherry Tatum today, but I've got some fabulous friends with me that are here to help guest co-host with me. I have the wonderful Regina Howard, and I have Miss Julia Walker-Cruz with me, y'all. Friends, welcome to the set.
Hey. It's so nice to be back.
It has been way too long
that
I have not been with you, but I'm so happy to have you, and of course, you're fabulous always.
Okay.
So, but you know what? I was thinking back, because I feel quite seasoned in my life now that I'm getting older, but I was thinking about just growing up. I have a 5-year-old daughter, as you guys know, and you know, things are moving along in her life, and I started thinking, wow, how was I when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe a teenager? But it feels like it's been like 15,000 years ago.
Yes.
I can't remember. Does it feel like a lifetime
yes,
ago?
it does.
It does.
A lot happens, yes.
Especially
a lot has
when
happened.
you see your children.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your children are growing up, and then they're the age that you were, and you think, was I like that when I was
Did I do
her
that?
age? Did I do that?
Right.
Yeah. So, but gosh, you're making us think.
I know.
Yeah,
So I put you on the
back.
spot. Do you remember your teenage years? What were you out doing?
Just going to dances and doing my schoolwork. And
You were studying in the library.
Sure, yes, that's what I was doing.
How about you?
Literally, I really was.
You really were?
Yeah, I really was.
No, I was not a good student.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't even go to prom.
Really?
Believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and so, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's still good.
Yeah.
But just to watch kids get ready for prom
Right.
now,
Yeah.
and you think about it, it's so much different
It
Right.
is.
than when we
What
were
it was.
preparing, and we, you know, back in the day, even if you went or if you didn't go,
Right.
you still watched your friends get ready and
Right.
prepare for it. And times are just so
Well,
different.
we
So
will be
different.
coming back with a guest who's going to talk to us about his teenage years and how God has shaped his life. So come back after this break.
Hi, welcome back to Friends and Neighbors. I'm Julia Walker-Cruz, and we have an exciting guest. I had the honor of meeting this young man a couple of years ago when I was in line at Fulton County Courthouse to pay a ticket. Let's just say he rescued me.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and so as a result,
What were you doing?
I'm not going to say. No, I'm just kidding. I got a traffic ticket, but let's just say that it was not my fault.
Of course.
So anyway, so in meeting him, he shared a little bit about his story with me, and at this time he was writing the book, and it was about to go into publication.
Yeah.
Now he's written it, and there's a lot of exciting things happening, and his name is David Windecher. He's from Miami, and he's written the book called The American Dream, His Story in the Making. So welcome, David,
Welcome,
to
David.
Friends and Neighbors.
Thank you, Julia.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Regina. It's nice to be
God
here.
has a way of orchestrating divine appointments, and
Yes.
it seems like that was
Truly.
a divine appointment.
Oh my God.
It was, and I didn't know if we were going to get into that, but
Yeah,
I thought she wanted to break the attorney-client privilege.
Yes, he's my
Chit-chat
attorney,
a
so
little
no,
bit.
we're not going to.
We're not going to go into that, but
It's
tell
the
us your
GPS is
story. I
false.
would love to hear about what brought you to being an attorney.
Sure. So back in 2015, when I met Julia, I was in the process of publishing the book, and the nutshell version of it is that we moved from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Miami, Florida. My parents migrated there to try to pursue the American dream. We were impoverished. We live in Miami-Dade County, and you know, there wasn't much to go around, but we understood we had a good home. My parents gave us good guiding principles. They understood that teaching us to be God-fearing individuals and loving individuals and compassionate individuals was important. We just didn't have much. Fridays would come along and the fridge would be empty. It was difficult. So around the age of 11, I wanted to buy a set of pegs, but I couldn't ask my parents for money because the bicycle that my parents gave us was a used bicycle that had a stripped gooseneck, so the handlebars would pivot. Couldn't tow my brother, And so I made a mistake. As an 11-year-old, I couldn't understand how to cope with poverty. I went to the nearest bicycle store and I stole a set of pegs. And of course, when I'm trying to flee, unbeknownst to me, the owner of the store, who was a triathlete, was in hot pursuit. And, you know, I stumbled. Oh, yeah, he was a machine. And he caught me, no problem. He said, listen, you're going to go to jail. You're a little crook. I started crying. I said, please don't call my parents. And he did. He called the cops. And this is 1990. So we're at the height of the Get Tough on Crime movement, where it's basically just prosecute and lock everybody up. So by the time I went in front of the judge adjudicated me delinquent. They put me on probation as an 11-year-old. They asked me to do theft deterrent programs, and I had to do a bunch of community service hours. So it had an effect on me. There was no healthy, constructive way to kind of adapt to my new situation. It actually made me resist my situation more. Oh, yeah. I became introverted. The friends I was able to keep, I would never see because I spent my weekends doing community service, and really no parent wanted their kids hanging out with me because I'm the 11-year-old on probation, and I get it. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm 13 years old. I go to middle school. The first Friday of middle school, I'm walking home, and 2 kids come up to me and they say, hey, which way are you going home? I said, I'm going towards Grand Olds Park. So they said, oh, well, we'll walk with you since we're going in that same direction. And I remember we had to walk across the neighborhood, and then there was a canal that had a bridge that we would get to the neighborhood we lived in. When we approached the bridge, I don't remember anything else. The next thing I remember was waking up face down. When I stand up, I'm bloodied, I'm concussed, and I notice my shoes are missing. And so I see my shoes are missing. I'm thinking, did I get hit by a car? And then I notice my shirt's missing, and I also notice my shorts are missing. So my book bag is gone. These kids jumped me and left me for dead. And they basically just kind of took all my stuff and made me feel as if they were my friends. So what they didn't know about me is my dad was a boxer. And so I kind of knew how to use my hands a little bit. Fast forward the next Friday, I'm walking the same path. Guess who's there? The same 2 kids. Now, I pounded them into the concrete, and I told them, look, I'm not the guy. You shouldn't ever do this again. I didn't take any of their belongings. Like I said, I wasn't raised wrong. I was raised in the wrong place. You know? And so...
That's a good point. No.
Yeah, I didn't need to steal. I just wanted to make a point.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to bully me because it's not going to work.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, you know, I'm Mr. Tough Guy on campus. Come the next week, you know, the girls are giving me the twinkly eyes. There's a rumor about what I did. And then, so I'm with my chest out all week. But come Friday, I'm walking home. And guess who's at that bridge? The 2 kids with 15, 20 of their friends.
How many more kids?
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. It was tough. I mean, they bloodied me up. Swollen lip, shut eye, cracked ribs. I was mangled so badly I couldn't go to school for a week. And during that week, I witnessed my first murder. My mom said, hey, you're getting better. You can go to the movie theaters with your brother. And while we're watching the previews for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, it's a while ago, it's showing my age now.
Right.
But so we, it was sad because we hear this noise and this pots and pans banging noise. We go outside and we see 4 kids jumping on 1 kid. And the 1 kid that's getting jumped, he's saying something and he's stacking signs. Stacking signs is when you show your gang sign. And one of his attackers picks him up and brings him close to him, and the kid spits on his face. So the attacker drops him down to the ground, pulls out a gun, and boom, shoots him. And now I'm about 10 yards away from this, so I could smell popcorn, gunpowder, and blood in the air.
And how old are you again?
13.
13.
It freaked me out. You know, we had to hop over a dead body to get outside. My brother and I run home, and we're just, you know, crying. You don't see something that's traumatizing. And when I get home that night, I relived that moment.
Yeah.
But instead of me
did.
watching it, I was the kid who got shot. And so
Lord.
that's what led me to gang life, because I knew that I needed to survive my neighborhood.
It's like survival of the fittest,
Yeah.
right? You're kind of here, and your mom and dad, were they, I know you were saying they were God-fearing, and
Yes.
they taught you how to, were you able to share with them? Were you able to,
They-
I know you said you were you became very introverted.
Right.
So.
It was hard for them because they didn't understand the environment. You know, we came from Argentina.
Yes.
This
the
is all foreign to
cultural-
us, right?
Right. I totally
yeah,
understand
you
that
do.
because we came here as well, and we had that cultural
Right.
shock.
And so my parents, you know, they call the school, and the school
Trying to
can't
fit
do
in.
anything for you. Then they call the police, and the police come out and they say, sorry, we can't do anything for you. So what do you do? And the only way I was going to protect myself from getting jumped over and over again by those kids is if I had some protection.
Yeah.
So I'm Hispanic. I talked to some Hispanic kids about getting into one of their gangs, and I did. I got jumped into the gang at 13, and you know, I just kind of got consumed by the gang life. There was something about how these guys were so compassionate, and they took care of one another.
They took care of their own.
Oh, absolutely. They would give
Got
their
your
shirt off
back.
their back.
Yeah.
And they were super kind to each other. You know, of course, if there's issues and, you know, they become a little bit not so kind. But so, and I was
became
intrigued.
family.
They became my family.
Yeah.
That was my family. I started spending so much time with them that I was kind of curious as to how do they get new clothes all the time?
Yeah.
Why do they always have money to buy food? And so here I am thinking, what they're doing something, I want to know what it is, so I paid more attention. I noticed they were selling drugs. Come the age of 16, when I can drop out from school without any consequences to my parents, and education is the cornerstone of growth. I love learning. But I was in 9th grade, and I remember doing the same math in 9th grade in America that I had already done in Argentina in the 5th grade. So you can't stimulate me.
Right.
You can't keep my attention. And I want to overcome poverty. So
Right.
school's not doing anything for me. I'm going to go get into the dope game. And that's what I did. I started selling drugs. And I got addicted. Not to the drugs. I don't do drugs, and drugs are not my thing, but I enjoy money. I like knowing where my next meal is coming from. So,
Addicted to that life.
oh yeah, the fast money.
And you mentioned that it becomes kind of like a high in a way, and not that you were doing drugs, but the actual, I'm getting paid, there's an
Quick
incentive
fix.
here, it's a
Yeah.
quick fix, I'm getting clothes, I'm getting all these things. It's kind of that lifestyle.
Oh, totally. And you can provide for your family.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, mind you, I got arrested at 11, so I have a record. The jobs that 16-year-old kids are getting, which is, you know,
Yeah.
working at McDonald's
You're
or
like,
Burger
I
King.
can't do
I can't
that.
get it,
And
right? Because all of a
remember,
sudden,
yeah.
I have a
Right.
record, and that's
you're
what the
very,
system did to me.
right, and you're very smart. You're very, you
Yeah.
gather that, glean that from you. So you're kind of like, you know,
figure
mathematics. I
something
got
out.
this. Let me
Yeah.
get right.
And then once you
exactly.
start,
Oh, it's an addiction.
it's hard to stop where
That's
your
what you
addiction
said.
comes
Yeah,
in.
that's the problem.
And then, you know, well, I've got it now, so I need to make sure
Yeah.
that I keep this food to be able to go to the refrigerator on a Friday.
Right, and then the
food's
fridge is
there.
full,
Yeah.
exactly. And so now, a couple of months into that, I started realizing that I can run this like a corporation. I was thinking bigger. And so I wanted to do from quarter pounds to pounds, from opening up drive-through marijuana places to trafficking it across state lines. I really got into it. I wanted to run it like a business. But, you know, when you're making money that way, there's going to be consequences.
Yes, sir.
And there's going to be a lot of enemies.
And
So,
what was one of those consequences?
well, one of those consequences was I didn't know where to put my money, and so I would buy a bunch of cars. And I remember where we had our drive-through marijuana sale location, I had all my cars parked there.
Wow.
And I took one of my cars one day and went to the gas station, and I wanted to be super thug, so I got my music blasting because I wanted everybody to pay attention to me. And I leave my music on, I go inside to pay for my gas, and all of a sudden, the music cuts off. But I'm thinking something's wrong because that song I just put on is about 6 minutes long, and 30
Lord.
seconds in,
Yeah.
it's shut off. I look back, and some kid's butt sticking out of my car, and the door's flung open. So I go back out, I start going towards the car, and I hear a loud whistle, and the kid gets out of the car and runs towards another car. So of course I'm not going to approach the car, that's how you get shot. So I went to my car, and my detachable face was missing, and my cell phone was missing.
Wow.
We have this culture in the hood that if you don't administer some kind of retribution, you're soft. And so it'll keep happening over and over again. I go to this kid's house, I see him out front, he comes out, he's wielding a gun, and I said, look, I just want my stuff back. I need my stuff back. And he says, you coming over here to my mama's house? And I said, I'm sorry, but you gave me a reason to. You know, I want my stuff back. And so his sister persuades him to put the gun down. He puts the gun down, of course. I attack him, and I start beating him up. And as I'm beating him up, I hear, freeze. And that's code word for run as fast as you can. So I started bolting, looking back, and I go into this park. I climb up the highest oak tree in the park, and I'm hiding in there until I hear a barking. And I'm thinking somebody left their dog in the park,
Oh, Lord.
but
Bears.
those are the hounds coming after me.
Right.
So here comes the hounds, and I'm thinking I need to get down from this tree. They're going to find me. As soon as I hit the floor, I hear a loud clunking sound, like as if you overloaded your washing machine. And so I hear clunk, 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 and then a loud, like a big light and a huge wind. And I look up, and there's the ghetto bird. That's what we used to call the chopper, the ghetto bird. So the ghetto bird's up there.
We are learning a lot of
I know.
language.
Well, we were in the library apparently when we were teenagers.
We were getting ready for the prom.
I like the library in law school.
I never got asked to the prom, but that's a different.
I did go to the prom,
Go
yes.
ahead.
Yeah, so here I am. I'm getting chased by a helicopter. I'm running across the park, and I have to hop over a fence to get to my safe haven. And it's one of those fences that has the pole and then the protruding fence. So I put my hand on there and I throw my body over it. And I didn't realize I pierced my hand. So I'm hanging off the fence.
Oh my God.
I'm dripping blood. I'm getting a little nauseous. And unfortunately, I want to preface this with saying I don't have a disdain for police officers. I love police officers. They're phenomenal. But back then, my experience was that they were abusing their discretion. I mean, I've had plenty of times where I got beat up by police officers and taken to rival gang territory. Or I got stopped for whatever profile they had, and they would say, hey, what are these drugs and money on you? We're going to take this as your lucky day. And I'm thinking, it's your lucky day. You just made some money.
Right.
You know? And so that was my experience. And I'm thinking, at this point, this is the one time that they'll probably pull a bullet in me. So I rip my hand off the fence. I'm getting nauseous. I get to my friend's house, and I hide. And I hide the whole night. I wait for the morning, and then I realize I'm being looked for everywhere. There's a warrant for me. Everybody knows who it is because I went to the kid's house. They identified me. So I had to turn myself in. I turned myself in. I'm 16 years old.
That just takes so much courage.
It sure does, just to turn yourself in.
To turn yourself in. Where were you in that spot? We've got about 2 minutes before the next commercial break, because we'll be back. We'll be back to talk about this. But what gave you that courage, or were you just scared?
I was scared because I knew that they were going to come find me at some point, and I know how those things end up.
Gotcha.
And so I was willing to, turn myself in. I turned myself in. I went in front of the juvenile court judge. The prosecutor stands up and he says, we object to his pretrial release. He's got 11 arrests the last 12 months. He's going to have someone's innocent blood in their hands. And the public defender stands up and says, no, this is self-defense. They're coloring in that way because they know this was self-defense. They're saying I'm gang affiliated, and maybe that was true, but they got so tired of it that he stood up and said, we're going to just direct file him. And they take me from, direct filing means that they're going to take me from juvenile court to adult court. And the worst thing you can do is put a 16-year-old incarcerated with some really violent people. There's nothing good that comes out of that.
With a direct
and we're talking
trial.
about we did the prom. We were like getting ready for it.
I was looking at 15 years in prison at 16 years old.
And you're right there at that moment. And so no trial. I don't know much about the court system, but like just direct file, meaning we're done, we're moving forward.
No, direct file means that they transition me from juvenile court to circuit court, which is adult court.
So you still go to court.
Right, so instead of battery, now I'm facing aggravated battery.
That's right. Well, we've got 30 seconds. So we will be, Julie, we'll be back.
Yeah,
we're
we'll
going
be
to talk
back,
more.
because what happened while you were in jail, I think, is what led to where he is today. Is that a good way of putting
exactly
that?
true.
Yes, because to me, knowing the impact that he's making now on lives is tremendous.
And we will be right back.
We will be right back.
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
Welcome back. What a riveting story. David, we have just a few more minutes left of this segment. And get us caught up. Like, how many times did you go to jail?
So the last time I walked out of jail was when I was 19. It was April 1997, and I had been arrested 13 times at that point. I spent over 8 months incarcerated, and those 13 experiences is what led me to want to become an attorney, because I was starting to realize that the criminal justice system, it really adversely affected people who were status offenders, people coming from poverty, people with mental health disorders, substance abuse issues, academic deficiencies, folks that couldn't help their circumstances, the system would destroy. And so it motivated me to become an attorney so I can come back and change it. I knew that there was something I can do based on what I was seeing. And so it took a very long time to get into law school because of my arrest record. I applied to 50 law schools, and 48 of them turned me down.
That?
Wow, and this was at 19, 20, 21?
No, it took another 8 years later.
Yeah.
I went to school. It took 6.5 years. And I was about 31 years old when I finally got to law school. And it was John Marshall here in Atlanta that gave me a shot.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Oh, I love John Marshall. They really helped me out. It was a blessing.
I bet they're glad now.
Oh, I love it because a lot of folks are like, oh, John Marshall's not a great school. Well, you know what? The Constitution Constitution that they use at John Marshall is the same Constitution that they use at Harvard.
That's
So
exactly
you're
right.
learning the same law. It's
Yeah.
up to you what you want to do with it. So at that point, I started realizing that I needed to share my story because I was starting to understand that this was not a conventional path I was on.
Right.
And so I memorialized it in an autobiography.
Yep,
I
here we
published
go.
it in May of 2015.
You want to show that to the camera so that,
Yeah,
they'll-
this was published in May of 2015. And it just tells my 13 arrests, what it took to rehabilitate and then the climb to the American dream as an impoverished minority.
And here we're also joined with a special guest, one of your
Yes.
friends. Tell us a little bit about
Andre Jones.
So Andre Jones is a friend of mine now, and we started off as he's a program participant for RED. RED is my nonprofit,
Yeah.
which is Rehabilitation Enables Dreams. Specifically, we're talking about rehabilitating nonviolent offenders. Andre came into our program in January of 2017. He and I hit it off because we had a lot of similarities in our backgrounds. And what we're trying to do with our program is to show that evidence-based programs that provide a curriculum to help people develop into the best version of themselves are far more effective for our community than probation, because
So
probation is
true.
punitive.
Right.
So Andre's story is interesting because when you're on probation, one of the requirements is to be employed. So because of the charge, it was hard for him to get a job. Our program is 12 months long. It runs from January to December.
Isn't that right? Yeah.
Right, and so in May, he finally gets a job, and he's working May, June, July, and August. Everything's great. He has to check in with his probation officer every single week, and he's checking in. He gives her the schedule. The schedule is he's off on Tuesdays, but she keeps putting him on Monday. He's got to go to work. He's using public transportation. It makes it really difficult. He gets, but he succeeded in doing that for a few months until, unfortunately, in August, one of your relatives passed away, right?
Yeah, my aunt.
Your
Aunt
auntie,
passed away.
okay.
And so the funeral was scheduled on Monday at 8 a.m. And Monday at 8 a.m. is when he has to check in with his probation officer. So he calls the probation officer, and what does she say?
She pretty much just had like no regard for like my loss or anything. She just was like, "Oh, I'm not planning around you. I told you to be here at 8. That's that. If not, well, you got a warrant out for your arrest."
Oh my
That's
God.
shocking. This is
Andre.
inhumane,
Yeah.
borderline inhumane. And so I say, Andre, let me give her a call. I call her up and I say, hey, this is David Windecher. I represent Andre, and he's
Oh,
in
my
our
God.
program. I said, he did have someone pass away, unfortunately. He does need to be at the funeral.
Defending him.
Right,
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
say, like, this is not him lying about
Yeah.
something. He's just, he's having a moment that he needs to be somewhere else besides where you want him. And so she calls him back and says, don't ever, expletive, have your attorney call me.
Ooh.
And he says, okay. And he calls me back and says, what do I do? And I said, you have to go pay your respects. You have to go to the funeral. Just go immediately after. I leave her another voicemail saying, hey, he'll be there immediately after the
Yeah.
funeral. So on the day of the funeral, he goes to the funeral. He gets to the probation officer's office at 1 p.m. She keeps him there from 1 p.m. till 4:35.
Yeah, like she didn't see me till 4, but they close at 4:30.
Oh,
so
yeah.
me seeing her, I stayed talking to her from 4 to for like 30 minutes. Till.
And what was the problem? That you had to be at work at 3.
Yeah.
And she
Which
knows this.
means you.
And plus, I'm on public transportation, so it took me like another 2 hours just
oh
to
my
get
God.
back.
Andre.
to
But
that
just
side.
not helpful at all to
Not
the
helpful.
entire situation of it's a family situation.
Right.
Right.
And this led to what?
Well, he ends up getting fired when he gets there around 6 or 7.
Which under probation, you got to keep a job.
Right.
Yeah.
so
And
it's this horrible roller cycle.
Yeah, it,
Right.
it doesn't really end with them. They say they're here to help, but most of the time they don't really care.
And so his program, RED, is what's going to support the recidivism rate lowering.
Exactly. So our goal is to reduce recidivism, which is recidivism is one's propensity to relapse into criminal behavior.
Okay, please say that one more time because I am so layman and I don't even, that's got like 15,000
Nikita's over there trying to say
So-
that. We have an audience, by the way.
Recidivism is one's propensity to relapse into criminal behavior.
Okay.
He doesn't have the propensity to relapse into criminal behavior. He just has certain circumstances that make it very difficult to manage an everyday life. He has to do public transportation. He's on probation. He's got to check in. He's going to his job. And he's got kids that he takes care of. This job was feeding his family.
Wow.
My babies.
And so to tell you what happened, so she calls, I call her up and I said, listen, you do realize that you're a probation officer. One of the requirements of being on probation is that they keep employment, and you are now the cause of him being terminated. And she says, well, he needed to be here at 8 in the morning. I said, he had to be at a funeral. How can you not understand that?
Well, I am so thankful. We have just 2 more minutes
yeah.
before we close, but I am so thankful, and I have to say this because the fingerprint of God from the beginning,
Oh,
He
yes.
loves every single individual. And the way that He has worked in your life, even with the choices that you made, but how he got you through that, and
Met
then
with him in
also
jail.
brought you
Yeah.
out of jail and fostered that feeling that I need to be this advocate and this defense, because now you're a criminal defense attorney,
Right.
and you know the inside and the outside to be able to help someone legally and not go through loopholes, but to actually give them the
Give them
chance
life.
that they need,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, a network of opportunities
A network
to
of
become,
opportunities.
to self-actualize and become
Right.
the best version of themselves. We want him to be a taxpayer.
Right.
That's
Why? Because
right.
it
And
stimulates
the
our
court
economy.
system is not there, and the jail system is not there to foster that. We as a community, and this is why we have these programs, we have 1 minute to close, but we've got these programs because we want to uplift, encourage, edify the viewers and the community. And we have leaders with your testimony.
And let
like
me add
you,
this about
too.
David. He said to me one time, he said, I created Red so that I can reach out to other Davids.
That's awesome.
And so that to me
And let's
is
not
what we should
let's
be doing.
not forget that at the cross, Jesus was
Oh,
flanked
yeah.
by 2 criminals, and they are in heaven right now because they believe in Jesus Christ. Y'all, we have 30 seconds
Yes,
left,
here's
and I
the
just want to
book.
wrap this up. But thank you for being here with us. Y'all, go
We need to
out
have him
and
back.
get this book. You will be encouraged, and remember, Jesus loves you. We are here to be the light of the world, and I'm so thankful to meet you. Thank you for being
And
here.
Andre.
And Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you for sharing your story. No
problem.
Thank you so much. And friends, we will see you next time on Friends and Neighbors. Thank you for joining us today. And thanks, Julie, for being here. See y'all later.